Hi there. Welcome back to Tuesday's Tips. I'm Greg Kaiser, and we're going to be back into Lightroom this week. I'm talking about one of the more recent updates. And I know I just got done going through pretty much all of the tools, at least the ones that I use. But every once in a while, updates do happen. So those of you that are on the subscription plan and do get the updates, then you should have this one also. And it's dealing with something we've talked about, and it fundamentally has not changed, but the way that we interface with the tool has changed. We'll be talking about the remove tool, and I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time talking. We're going to go ahead and move right in, and here we see the picture we're going to talk about. It's one that I shot just a couple days ago. Because of how I had to shoot it to get the scaling right between this farm back here and the barn up here, I was across the street, which then introduced a light pole here and the road. Now, I shot this for how I intended to edit it, and I knew that I was going to be able to remove this, and oddly enough, I didn't realize that they had changed the remove tool, which made this a whole lot easier to do, because it was a little glitchy, a little cumbersome to work with before. But we're going to go ahead and get into it, and I'm going to show you what we're talking about. If you go up here to the remove tool under the histogram, looks like the giant eraser. It brings up this dialog box, and pretty much it's going to look the same way that it always has. We've got the three tools here. We've got the remove tool, we've got the heal tool, and we have the clone stamp. Size and feather here. Of course, the feather is not available when we're talking about the remove, but the feather gets changed around for the generative AI and detect objects. Visualize spots is still here, just like it has been since a little bit more distant release. It used to be down in this area, but they moved it up here, which is the tool that you're going to use to get rid of the spots. So that made a whole lot of sense. But so far, everything is looking pretty much the same, and it still functions the same. If we were to go down here and use the clone stamp tool, we would kind of highlight over the road, which is what I want to remove. It's going to find an area, and this situation is up here in these leaves. The texture is not right. We can either manually adjust where this goes and get something that is a little bit more fitting. Still not quite there. We can hit the refresh button, and I think that this is actually new. But it'll allow you to have it go and pick out another thing. It still wants to go up here to the leaves. So this is where this really gets new. Before, you'd have to delete it or go and hit the heal tool and start over. Here within the selected item, meaning right here that we're working on, where it says fill, we have clone, which is how we started. We can move this to heal. Now we are still in the clone stamp tool, but we have now changed it over to a heal. Again, we can move it manually if we want to do. That's actually not bad. You can hit the refresh button. Again, it just for whatever reason likes to pull from up here. Just say that we're not happy at all with this. Let's go into remove. And I'm going to show you a slight difference here that I don't think I showed you last go around. Now I hit remove, still within the select tool. We are still working within the clone stamp though, and it can be any one of these three things, because inside this selected box, whatever you select here is what you are working with, and that's where the big difference is, and I'm going to tell you why here in just a minute after we finish this. But if we go in and zoom in, and this is with the just straight remove tool, you see how it gives this kind of foggy appearance all around the edge here. It's not really generating anything. It's more or less pulling from areas around. It's not that great. So for a situation like this where we're taking out a road, we're recreating the land, I would suggest doing generative remove. And it's going to generate something in its place. And just like always, we get this dialog box here. And it's going to do its thing. And here we go. Now we don't have this weird haziness going. There's a little bit of weird artifacting going on here, but just like before, we go to the variations. We can cycle through. That doesn't look too bad. Spacebar, let's zoom back out. Okay, I can deal with that. Now, here's where it was interesting. Before, you could change which selection that you wanted to do within a selection like we just did. But the next time that you went and applied the tool, it would be whatever we just did. So if we ended up with generative remove here, and we decide we're going to come up here and do this light pole, and we're going to assume that it is generative remove, just like before, we would be wrong. And I actually like this feature because it started off in the clone stamp tool, and that's what we are now still with for this next one. We have not affected this at all. We are only in this. Now obviously this is problematic. It doesn't work. We're taking too much out for the clone tool. So let's just go ahead and delete this just for the sake of argument. Because a lot of times what would happen is if we went down here, we changed things around, we ended up doing the generative remove here, and then we knew we wanted to do like a heal or a clone stamp here, we would go and click that next tool, but it would change the last tool that we used. If you weren't paying attention, you could get something done just like you wanted, get ready to do something else, click the next tool without closing out, and you have now changed what you have done with the previous one. With this new update, because it gives you this secondary dialog box for the selected image or selected portion of the image, that is locked in. And once you go to a different place on the screen or whatever, it goes back to what you did before, or you can change the tool. So let's go here, and we're on the remove. I want to remove the generative AI, and I want to show you again the difference. And this is where generative AI, I think, really comes in handy. And we've seen what Clone Stamp does. Let's do the heal, just for comparison. And ideally, you'd probably do this in smaller portions. And this is how I used to remove stuff in Lightroom. But you see, it picks random stuff. I can hit refresh. And that's a little bit better, but if we spacebar and zoom in, you can see some of this fogging, which I don't particularly like. So within this box, let's go into remove. Let's see what happens. Okay. The clouds look much better, but as we saw before, when it's dealing with textures, it seems to have a hard time and gives this kind of hazy look, which doesn't really work for me. So if we go over here and do generative remove, this is going through the AI engines and that sort of thing, and it makes removing stuff like this a whole lot easier. And you see right away that haziness that I had the problem with is gone. The clouds still look good. I can hit H on my keyboard. Let me zoom out. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. All right. H toggles these things on and off so you can see where you're at. And I will say that right now, at least for me, Lightroom is a little glitchy after the update. Normally that mask there would be removed when I hit H. It just lingered. I'm having some issues, and I don't know if that's my particular computer and how the update's working, or they just haven't worked all the bugs out. But fundamentally, this works so much better because originally it would have been a matter of a little bit of clone stamping, a little bit of healing, and then I would be able to do the remove, but then have to go in and clone stamp or heal those fogged areas. Now it's just generative remove, and there you go. So what happens if you want to really get into something? Now again, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to remove this entire farm. Don't want to do that, but for the sake of argument, let's see what happens. This is one of those where I would go up here and I know what I'm going to do. I know I want to do generative remove. I'm going to click that. With the old version of Lightroom, the one from the previous, it would have changed this right here. And if I wasn't paying attention, I could end up with something really weird going on here as my attention's here. So I really appreciate Adobe for making it to where we can change tools without closing out, reopening this toolbox. So we're going to use generative AI. We're going to detect objects. So we're going to tell Lightroom that we are removing these objects here and letting it kind of replace it with what AI determines works with the surroundings. And again, it's probably better to do this in bits and pieces, but just for argument's sake, I'm going to do it all at once. And let's just see. I like making Lightroom work for its dinner. So there we go. Now, with this, it's analyzing. It doesn't change anything, but here we've got it highlighted what it's looking at changing. If we need to subtract or add anything, we can. And I don't really want to do anything with the sky, so I'm going to subtract this area above the horizon, just so I don't really confuse matters any. And I can even come down here and get rid of the tall grass. So let's see what happens. Let's do remove. So we're doing the object aware and we're doing the generative AI remove. It takes it just a minute. That actually looks really good. It even got me some fall color in there. I can go to variations. That might even be a little bit better. It is picking up these tall grasses and it's bringing those in. So that's a nice thing with the AI. There's another one. All of those are actually passable, especially for a one shot and do it. But if we needed to do more, we don't like any of those three, we hit generate and it's going to rework that area again. And it's going to see if there's another set of three that might work better for us. And there we go. Again, that's not bad. Second option. Okay, it actually included some more of the irrigation line or whatever that was. So you get the idea. You pick what works best for you. But that was using the detect objects, so it knew that it was taking that farm out. Generative AI to fill it. That would take forever and a day doing a combination of clone and stamp. And if we did just straight remove, it would give that really weird hazy thing going on that we've seen every other time. But this has really sped up the workflow within Lightroom. And this is something that most folks, and arguably for something as large as this, myself included, would have gone into Photoshop to do. But that's a round trip where you get the image pretty much set, then you take it to Photoshop, remove the stuff, round trip it back to Lightroom. And I value the ability to go in and do all of this in one fell swoop in one program. It's my little hang up. And for really, really high powered stuff, I probably would still go to Photoshop, but honestly, with the new updates with the remove tool here in Lightroom, it is a whole lot easier to work with, and I'm finding less and less need of going into Photoshop. And just as a reminder, if you've done local edits on an image and you go in and do these remove things through Lightroom, with Photoshop, it doesn't matter. It's going to resave it as a TIFF file, and nothing really changes. But if you do these remove tools, whether it's the clone stamp, the heal, remove, or the generative remove, and if you have local edits, you're going to see this little red dot underneath the masks. So we open the masks up and go to any one of the masks that we have. We click on it, come down here, update AI masks. And what that's going to do is anything that has changed because of source material for these masks, we can now clear up and just make sure that everything is good and clean. It just double checks that the masks are all right. So here we go, nothing changed, everything's good, that red dot is gone. Go back here and we would consider that done. So let's go ahead and call that a day. And like I said, this was not a real big deal by any stretch. This was a simple update. Nothing fundamentally changed with Lightroom. I very much like what they did with this update on that remove tool, because one of the problems I would have, as I've alluded to, you would do a remove, a clone, a heal, or whatever, and you would go to the next one and you would change to go to something else, and the previous one would change. So say for instance you're going through and you're removing sensor spots. For me, I like doing that with the heal brush. It just makes a whole lot of sense. Go in and just knock it out real quick. Don't have to sample or anything like that. But there are times and situations where that heal doesn't give me the results that I want. So I would end up playing around with that, and I would end up with using a clone stamp or maybe the remove, and then move on to the next one. And that's what my tool would be set as, but I'd want to go back to heal, so I'd move it back to heal, and my previous one that I'd finally gotten right would then be reset to a heal brush, and I'd be back at square one and having to fix that. So this way you stay in heal, removing all the spots. You get to that one problematic one, in that selected box you change it to whichever tool you need for that job, and then the next time you apply that tool onto your image, it is back to the heal automatically. So very, very nice. I like the refresh button. I still prefer manually moving, especially in the clone and the heal, because I tend to have an idea of what I want to replace that area with. So it just makes more sense for me. But each one of you is different. Each one of you is going to use this tool differently. You may still prefer to go into Photoshop. If you do, that's fine. If you're like me and want to stay within a single program for realistically 100% of your edit, you can do that with this new update. Again, very minor one, but one that I think that we should really be thankful for. So thanks for joining me. Not sure what we're going to get into next week. I've got a few ideas, but if you have anything that you would like me to cover, feel free to leave me some comments, and we will look at doing requests on Tuesday's tips. So until that time, I hope everybody has a great week ahead, and happy shooting, happy editing, and we'll see you in a week. Bye now.